In 1871, the Kingdom of Prussia, along with many German states such as Baden, Bavaria, and Württemberg, fights a war for unification against the Second French Empire. The many culturally distinct kingdoms, duchies, and principalities, whose only commonality is language for the most part, form into a single nation-state, the German Empire. By the end, Paris is surrounded, and Napoleon III is captured, embracing the military aesthetics of the period, including brightly colored uniforms. The most iconic feature of this era in German military history is the Pickelhaube, or pointed helmet. The helmet is actually one of the first pieces of modular gear issued to soldiers en masse, with the spike being attached via a screw thread that makes it easy to remove and replace with other decorations, signifying different ranks or positions. Given the size of the German Confederation before unification, many different firearms are in use, such as the Prussian breech-loading Dreyse Needle Gun, the Bavarian Podwheels gun, the Saxon Jaeger Büchse M1865, and many others. The ambitions of Germany in the 19th century extend far beyond the shores of Europe. A single glance at the German colonial uniforms immediately shows a much greater commitment to practicality over style, with drab colors and simple designs featuring minimal decoration to distinguish officers from enlisted men. The expensive Pickelhaube is often replaced by a slouch hat with a prominent cockade, while practical additions such as bandoliers and adjustable pouches are much more common sights. Like other colonial powers, Germany makes extensive use of native levies known as Askaris. These men wear even simpler uniforms made of khaki, in contrast to the more expensive corduroy worn by German troops stationed in the colonies. Officers, who could actually afford to have their clothes laundered on a regular basis, still wear more elaborate outfits made of white or gray wool with decorative piping on their wrists to distinguish themselves from the common soldiers. Lastly, the German troops operating in East Asia wear khaki uniforms that are adopted from several other designs and recolored to help men deal with local temperatures. As we move into the Great War, we immediately see a reduction in flamboyant decorations and bright, eye-catching colors such as blue and green. The Pickelhaube remains standard issue until 1916, but the leather construction is simplified to one of sheet steel, which simultaneously gives better resistance to shrapnel and other hazards. Within just a few months, the need to simplify uniforms for mass production has completely overtaken even the most long-established army traditions, and there is little to distinguish the officers besides a few details. The Pickelhaube is still worn during ceremonial occasions, but most officers prefer simple caps known as Feldmütze. During 1916, a new, simpler all-metal helmet known as the Stahlhelm starts to replace the Pickelhaube as the standard infantry headgear. Meanwhile, the Gewehr 98 has become the standard issue rifle, a bolt-action design that would remain in service until 1935, at which point it is replaced by the Karabiner 98K. The next year will see the issuing of canister gas masks, which limit the effects of chemical warfare, and the steel hand granate will make its first appearance. Also of note is the MP-18, carried by the stormtroopers. This is one of the first submachine guns issued to troops in large numbers. After its defeat in the First World War, this is what the German army looked like. Besides the 100,000 soldiers, down from the 1.9 million in the First World War, that they were allowed to keep for defense purposes, these men were part of the Reichswehr, or Realm Defense Force, and their uniforms are as basic as you might expect. By now, the Stahlhelm has completely replaced the Pickelhaube, and apart from minor visual modifications, it will remain in common use until 1992. The German rearmament programs of the 1930s give birth to a slew of new uniforms representing the many different branches of the revitalized Wehrmacht, while the simple designs used by the Reichswehr are retained in some capacity. Branches like the Fallschirmjäger paratroopers and the Waffen-SS get specialized designs, reflecting their status as elite units. Given the global nature of the Second World War, two men fulfilling the exact same duties might be wearing completely different uniforms, depending on where they're stationed. For example, Erwin Rommel's famous Afrika Korps wear light tan or green overalls that help them blend into desert environments and prevent men from dying of heat stroke while weighed down with heavy kit. Speaking of heavy kit, The MG42 also strikes terror into the hearts of its enemies this year, quickly becoming one of the most instantly recognizable weapons of the war, both from its design and distinctive sound. In contrast, men stationed on the Eastern Front pack on as many layers as possible to avoid the terrible cold of the Russian winter. By now, camouflage patterns are becoming more and more common, especially among elite units like the SS Panzergrenadiers. The Germans also use a huge array of weapons, from the basic Karabiner 98K used by most infantrymen to the MP40 machine pistol used by non-commissioned officers, commissioned officers, and specialists. Following the disaster in the East that resulted in the annihilation of Army Group Center, the German army begins fielding a new type of soldier, the Volksgrenadier. Although often confused with the Volkssturm militia, these are professional soldiers drawn from various branches of the Wehrmacht, called back into service after being discharged due to injury. At this late stage of the war, they are often equipped with automatic weapons like the Sturmgewehr 44 and disposable anti-tank weapons such as the Panzerfaust. It would also be criminal not to mention the iconic uniforms of the SS, produced by the Hugo Boss company. It is a common misconception that Boss himself designed them, but in fact, he is only the producer. The true designer of the uniform and most other SS regalia is an artist called Karl Diebitsch, who is also a member of the organization. After the defeat of Germany in the Second World War, the country was divided between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union, and was demilitarized until 1954. But after West Germany joined NATO, they were allowed to create the Bundeswehr, a citizens' army whose simple uniforms are designed to emphasize their duty as defenders of the new German democracy. Naturally, these new uniforms are purposefully created to bear no resemblance to Nazi iconography, and even the Stahlhelm is redesigned to look less like the version worn by the Wehrmacht infantry. Their equipment remains mostly German-manufactured, however, with the Heckler & Koch G3 becoming the standard-issue battle rifle in 1959. East Germany also has its own military, known as the Nationale Volksarmee, or National People's Army, armed and equipped by the Soviets. The NVA is regarded by many officers in NATO as a highly effective and well-trained fighting force. Unlike the Bundeswehr, the NVA uniform is surprisingly similar to that of the old Wehrmacht, featuring similar colors and materials. Even the helmet is based on a Nazi prototype of the Stahlhelm that was not adopted during the war. Their arsenal also consists of an eclectic mixture of Wehrmacht and Soviet firearms, such as the Kar 98K and the Mosin Nagant. By the 1960s, these are mostly replaced by licensed copies of the classic Soviet AK, usually the AK-74 or AKM variants. Following the reunification of Germany in 1990, the NVA is integrated into the Bundeswehr, and their old uniforms are discarded in favor of modern combat fatigues decorated with Flecktarn camouflage patterns. In 1997, the venerable G3 is replaced with the much more modern G36, again made by Heckler & Koch. The 1990s also saw the complete replacement of the Stahlhelm with the Gefechtshelm M92, made out of high-durability synthetic composites. With modern wars increasingly taking place in desert environments, the Bundeswehr are often seen wearing desert-pattern camouflage and various accessories designed to make life easier in hot, arid environments, such as in Afghanistan. Protective goggles are frequently used, as are face masks and balaclavas. Now that our list is complete, let's return to our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an ideal online resource for anyone looking to build a website, community hub, or online business. In addition to boasting an intuitive, user-friendly interface, Squarespace gives you access to features like integrated analytics, podcast support, and mailing lists. No matter what your audience is or skill level, Squarespace is there to help you design something both practical and aesthetically appealing. Go to squarespace.com to start a free trial today. And once you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/armchairhistorian for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.